Good YouTube, Captain Machine here, back for another video, and today we're talking about CS1s. It says so on the front cover, but it actually means Cannibal Sector 1, which is one of the newer books that have come out for SLA Industries. I forget which one we're in the line now, it's second to last one that's in print. And this is where I get excited, this is where I start gushing, because I really enjoy this book, and I would love to see more stuff like this in the future, not only for this product line but also for other lines. I think there's something that everyone can walk away from with this in terms of what it gives you for your money. The bang for your buck on this module alone is insane. Firstly, it is very much a GM book. It is not a player book at all. It goes into a lot of details about the Cannibal sectors. The Cannibal sectors basically run down parts of the city which have been abandoned for hundreds and hundreds of years and have developed their own ecosystems and such and so forth. And the people that have been left behind the wall are cannibals, basically, hence the name. But you've also got other terrors that live in Cannibal sector, like the Carrion, which are a mutant, some kind of stable mutation breed of creatures which are humanoid but have like dog skulls for heads. It's hard to understand. You've got the Scavs, which appear to be independent soldiers, although they don't appear to be advertising themselves as any particular faction or soft company. You've got the Manchines as well, and then you've got other things that go bump in the night, which are quite entertaining. Overall, this is a fantastic book. It's very much a GM book, like I said before, because it gives you a lot of background on the things that I've just mentioned. It explains where the Carrion came from. It gives you a lot of ideas how to play them, how to make them threatening. It explains the mentality of cannibals and how to make those threatening, because on paper Carrion and cannibals are no match for even a starting character when it comes to SLA Industries. So it gives you a lot of good ideas how to make those interesting challenges. Then you've also got the background of the Scavs, which up until this point have only been mentioned in a couple of books and very briefly mentioned. Now it gives you a complete breakdown of where these creatures come from, what the motivations are, what they are, and what the history is, and what repercussions they have for SLA Industries in the future. And then you also hear about the Manchines as well. The history of the Manchines is fairly well known. It's been well covered in a lot of books up until this point, all about the failed Chrome era of SLA Industries and how they tried to go bionic as opposed to bio-augmentic. So there's a lot of information about there, although there is some sort of twist to it, some new ideas. And at the back, where are we? Is it the back? Yes. We've also got a bestiary as well. So you've got different critters, their stats. So this is something that in my opinion has been solely lacking from SLA Industries for a long time, is a decent critters. And it's only like 8 pages of critters. This is not a monster book, this is not a monster manual, but it fulfills that role by explaining about monsters to you and then giving you some stats for them and where to go from there. So we're going to try and break it down chapter by chapter because there's a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting material on here. First things first, like I say, you've got the information about the cannibals. It goes into a lot of details about the history of the sector and how it has influenced the humans around it, how the humans in there now act, what they do, and how the cannibal sector interacts with the city as a whole, because it is a shared existence between the two of them and it doesn't all go one way. It's not just a case of things from the Cannibal sector break into Mort City, things from Mort City kind of seep into Cannibal Sector 1 as well. So there's this like symbiotic relationship between the two, which is kind of weird, and it all gets separated by the wall, which is a massive structure which surrounds the whole of the sector, and it goes into a lot of detail about the people that man it, the near manic depressive suicidal shivers who have to man it, how they're obviously more well armed as you would expect them to be than regular street shivers, because there are things that are going to come over that wall and they have to stop them. That's their job, and they don't like doing it either. You've also got on here some, like I said before, some interesting to talk about the various different monsters. It also talks about stuff that's not being covered. There's an interesting ecology starting to build up within the cannibal sector of all the creatures. Insects mainly. There's a place called the Hive, which is basically all these different mutated bugs and insects and things like that that have developed over the years, all gathered in this one point, and it's at one point where they live, and it's all spreading out from there. So there's some interesting backgrounds in there. You've also got some what appear to be psychic entities which attack the individuals psychically. It also affects Ebons quite a lot, and that's quite entertaining because it gives you some horror aspects back. Plus the descriptions they use and of things that live in the cannibal sector do is also quite horrific. So you do get that seeping of the horror from here. You also get some new weaponry and some new ideas in terms of player packages. You've got the sector ranger, basically people that go out and live in the cannibal sector for a long period of time and deal with what things they can find and report back to head office. So they're quite entertaining if you want to play one of those. They've got their own equipment, and you've also got the grit stormer, which is a storm that's designated only to be used in cannibal sector because it's so horrific and it's so violent, and its method of procuring information, which is to eat the brains of its victims, is so loathsome that if it was to get out made public knowledge that SLA Industries makes these monsters, that they would themselves be seen to be the bad guys, and they don't want that to happen. But they are incredibly useful, and it gives you the options of wanting to play one of those if you want to. But it does stress that you're not going to be allowed in Mort City at all if you play one of these. Also lets you know what the soft companies are doing in there, because the soft companies do interact with Cannibal Sector as well as Mort's does. So it explains what Thresher do in there, what Dark Knight do in there. Although Trek Tech doesn't have a lot of influence in there, but it gives you some ideas of what they might potentially do. And then you get a surprise chapter, a real blessing in disguise chapter, which is basically a Shiver campaign, which is basically rules for creating your own Shiver characters, and also what kind of campaigns you expect to run with them, what kind of adventures you play with them. So if you're wanting to do a little bit of one-off, or you wanted to approach it from a slightly less power gaming aspect, then the Shiver campaign in the back of here is very entertaining. It's quite a surprise to come across that, because it's not something you'd expect on the remit of a book like this, but it's very entertaining, very surprising, and very much appreciated that it's in there. And then finally you've got some adventures in the back which give you some ideas of the kind of things you'd be expected to do, and there's a couple of really high level ones in here, and there's some really interesting almost apocalyptic adventures in the back of here which I'll not spoil, but if you're a GM I do recommend giving them a read. You never know, you might want to run them. Overall I give this book a solid 5 out of 5. This is a fantastic book. It answers a lot of questions that have been brought up over the years with regards to the history of the sector, gives you more of an idea of how the sector works, how it interacts with the city, and that looming shadow of a threat that the Cannibal sector was up until this point has been given some substance. But despite that, it's still there, it's still looming. In fact, some might argue it's bigger and nastier than ever because of what's in here. I really do love this book. I've heard tale when speaking to other people in the past about this that apparently the original developers for the line were not a big fan of this book because it does give out too much information. But in my honest opinion, you have to eventually bite the bullet and tell us information. You can't spoon feed us a paragraph a book or a page a book with regards to something. You have to eventually put your cards on the table and say this is it. And with the release schedule as much as SLA Industries has, you can't spoon feed you like say Vampire Masquerade did or Wealthy Apocalypse did, because they were bringing books out every month. They could do that, and if you were buying the books and keeping up, you could keep up with what they were talking about. But even they occasionally had to put their cards on the table and say, look, this is what's really happening, this is how you can use that information, and this is how you should go back and in hindsight read all the stuff we published beforehand, and it'll give you more of an understanding where we're coming from. You have to do that, and this is what this book does. And I think that not only does this line need more books like this in terms of things like Dark Knight, Thresher and such and so forth, but other product lines could stand to learn from this book as well. So if you're a product line that's got a mysterious organisation which you've only hinted at in books up until this point, you need to get fleshed out, you need a book like this, because this does the work for us. Things like I gushed about 40k before, but Dark Heresy has these things, these various different little bits and tidbits that they throw in into each book or each adventure, and eventually again they're going to have to put their cards down. They're going to have to give us all the information about it, or give us a good chunk of information about it, so we can work and build upon it and make our own ideas. And a book like this, exactly what every line needs, in my honest opinion, if you've got any sort of secrets and mysteries to it. Obviously mark it as a GM book, because this is what this is. But overall, 5 out of 5. It gives you a lot of information, very useful, and the surprise element of the Shiver campaign in the back is greatly appreciated as a gamer and as a GM alike. Thank you for your time, guys, and we've got one more to go.